Have you ever built something so personal, so hard-won, that the mere idea of someone else claiming it feels like theft? Not of property, but of your identity? My name is Maya Tran, and I'm 36 years old. I'm an architect, a sustainability consultant, and until recently, someone who truly believed that family, no matter how complicated, would never turn ambition into betrayal. 3 years ago, I broke ground on what I once thought was just a house, a net-zero eco-villa on the northeastern edge of Lake Washington. It's perched on a slope where the fog rolls in like silk, and the lake reflects the seasons with perfect clarity. Every material, every line in the design was intentional. The structure is not just green, it's regenerative. Solar integrated, glass, rainwater harvesting, a thermal core that keeps the space breathing. It wasn't built to impress. It was built to last. I called it my home. But to someone else in my family, it was just another stage, another photo backdrop, another shortcut to success. I should have seen it coming. But when I finally did, it was already too late, almost. The day everything began to unravel started quietly, like most betrayals do. I'd wrapped up a last-minute zoning meeting earlier than expected and decided to head back to the villa. It was mid-afternoon, the sun soft through the treetops, casting pale light across the driveway's cobblestone pattern, a detail I had personally fought the contractors to preserve. I was looking forward to a rare hour of solitude before the big launch weekend, but as I pulled up, something felt off. The security gate was open, not ajar, fully open. I hadn't authorized that. A red flag, but not yet a siren. I parked and walked toward the house, half expecting the landscapers to have simply left in a rush. Then I heard laughter echoing from inside, familiar, shrill, and unmistakably hers. Through the double glass doors, there she was, Chloe. My younger sister, barefoot on the stone entryway, arms gesturing as she spoke to two strangers I didn't recognize. One of them held a clipboard, the other was filming on a sleek, mirrorless camera. They were standing right where my curated moss wall met the handcrafted cedar panels, an architectural signature I had drawn in a notebook at 2 a.m. 5 years ago. I didn't walk in. I stood there for a moment, half hidden by the doorframe, listening. "This is just the first of many," Chloe was saying with rehearsed enthusiasm. "The idea is to blend Scandinavian minimalism with Pacific Northwest sustainability. My brand's been working on this concept for months." I stepped inside. She turned, eyes lighting up, as if she'd been waiting for a cue. "Oh, Maya, I was hoping you'd come back before we finished. Isn't it perfect? This space just screams foundation. Don't you think it's the ideal flagship for our launch?" I looked at her, genuinely unsure what she meant. Launch? Foundation? "What are you doing here?" I asked, flat. Chloe didn't flinch. "Mom and Dad said they told you. The villa's being transferred as part of the business, our new family venture. They figured since you're already successful and living alone, it makes more sense for the space to be used." I stared at her. The words were so casual, so unburdened, it took a second to register. "You're joking." She smiled, a rehearsed photogenic smirk I'd seen too often on her sponsored posts. "Not at all. You're still part of it, obviously. But the paperwork is going through. It'll be under Tran Green Horizons. We're making it a family brand." I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. For a moment, the floor beneath me felt less solid, as if my home had physically shifted. Everything I'd poured into this place, the all-nighters, the design grants, the permit fights, the decade of sacrifice, had just been reduced to a convenient bullet point in my sister's rebranding strategy. She looked at me expectantly, as if I'd nod, smile, maybe even pose for a photo. But all I could think was, how long had this been planned? and how far were they willing to go to make it real? The silence that followed stretched thin like glass. I could see the two strangers, shifting uncomfortably as Chloe turned back to them and whispered something with a smile. Then she excused herself and walked toward me, her tone suddenly hushed, sisterly, calculated. Maya, I know this is sudden, but you've always been the one who builds things. Maybe it's time the rest of us do something too. I looked at her, struggling to reconcile the sister I'd grown up with, the girl who used to sneak into my room to borrow books she never read, with the polished woman now pitching a business using my life's work as her foundation. Before I could respond, I heard the back door open. Footsteps, then voices. Our parents. Ah, there she is, my mother said, smiling as she breezed in like this was all perfectly normal. She was holding a fabric sample, gesturing toward the north wall. Chloe, I think this sage green would look lovely for your campaign backdrop. Dad trailed behind, not quite meeting my eyes. Maya, he said with a forced chuckle. We were just talking about you. This place is stunning. Exactly what Chloe's brand needs to launch with credibility. It hit me like a slap. They weren't just aware of Chloe's plan. They were helping. I stepped back, the words lodged somewhere between disbelief and rage. Are you serious? You're repurposing my home for an influencer rollout like it's a studio rental? You think this is branding material? I built this house. Chloe rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. You built a house, yes, a beautiful one. But you're not even here most of the time. You're always off in conferences or field work. And this place? It needs to be lived in, experienced, shared. I didn't build it for shares or likes, I snapped. I built it because it was my vision, because I wanted something in this world to feel like mine. My mother walked over, putting a hand on my arm. Honey, no one's taking anything from you. We're just trying to make this work for everyone. Chloe has an opportunity. And this house, it's too much for one person. You're strong enough to start over. There it was. That old narrative polished and delivered with love-tinged guilt. You don't need it. She does. Be the bigger person. Again. I remembered all the times. Growing up when I had to give up piano lessons so Chloe could have dance classes. When she got the newer car. When my scholarships were framed as lucky breaks, while her Instagram milestones were celebrated like Nobel Prizes. They had always asked me to be the one who understands, who gives in. But this wasn't a childhood squabble. This was theft, wrapped in soft reasoning and sweet smiles. I pulled away. You didn't ask. You just assumed. And Chloe, how long have you been using this house in your branding? Do you even understand what it took to get here? The structural certifications? The design integrity audits? This isn't a prop. It's a real architectural statement. Chloe looked mildly amused. Maya, no one cares about technical specs. People care about the vibe, the message. Sustainability is hot right now, and I have the platform to make it shine. Your platform? I repeated. So you steal my work and pretend it's yours? Dad stepped forward then, adopting that calm, patriarchal tone he used when he thought emotions needed managing. We're not stealing. This is all in the family. It's a shared legacy. I stared at them, my pulse pounding in my ears. No, it's not. It's my legacy. Because I'm the only one who put anything real into it. There was a long pause, and then Chloe smiled, slow, confident, like she had all the cards. If you really want to fight this, Maya, go ahead. But I've already started the paperwork. Investors are interested. Mom and Dad are backing me. And let's be honest, people won't side with the sister who locks herself in blueprints. They'll side with the one who shows up. I didn't answer her. I walked past them, up the stairs, into the home office I had designed to overlook the lake. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it as my breath came in short, sharp bursts. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about everything I'd tried to protect by keeping my distance. And it was finally catching up to me. They didn't just cross a line. They never believed the line existed. I didn't leave that room for nearly 2 hours. I sat by the corner window, the one I had angled precisely to frame the lake at sunset, and watched as the sky dimmed and the lights downstairs flickered on. Laughter carried faintly through the walls. Chloe was still entertaining her guests as if nothing had happened, as if the entire house, the life poured into it, was hers to direct. But something shifted in me. A clarity, maybe. A resolve. I hadn't felt since the early days of this project, when city permits were failing and contractors were walking out, and I still showed up at the site every morning, mud on my boots and graphite on my hands. I had done hard things. I could do this too. The next morning, I went to my law office downtown, where I'd kept every major document related to the villa. Blueprints, engineering assessments, contractor contracts, the full ownership deed under my private LLC, Lumen Habitat Studio. My name was on every permit, every payment. The LLC owned the land, the house, every design element had been copyrighted. I had even recorded a video walkthrough 2 years earlier during construction, detailing each material's environmental rating. I left the office with a full folder and a flash drive. I wasn't going to confront them with emotion anymore. I was going to bury them in facts. Back at the villa, the driveway was still full. A sleek black SUV was parked right where the native ferns lined the entrance. I walked in through the back patio, bypassing everyone. Chloe was seated on the sunken couch in the living area, surrounded by what now looked like an informal investor pitch. Pamphlets, iPads, even a mock-up of what I instantly recognized as my design plans, recolored and stamped with her fake logo. Stepped into the center of the room and said one word, sharp and clear. Out. Everyone looked up. Chloe blinked in surprise. Maya, we're just in the middle of... Now, I said, pulling a slim black folder from my bag. This house is not for sale. It's not a brand platform. It's not your inheritance. It's mine, and I have the documents to prove it. She laughed lightly, trying to maintain composure in front of her audience. You can't just barge in and make accusations. This is a professional meeting. Then let's talk like professionals, I said, flipping open the folder. These are the original blueprints, signed off by the city's zoning board. The ownership deed is filed under Lumen Habitat Studio, my firm, registered 5 years ago. Here are the invoices, contractor contracts, even the sustainability certification issued by the Department of Environmental Standards. Every dollar spent on this house came from my accounts. Chloe's lips parted, but no words came. I continued, voice steady. Your name appears nowhere, not on any document. And unless you can produce a signed lease or ownership transfer, which you can't, you are trespassing. Every video taken here, every pitch you've made using this space, is a misrepresentation at best, and fraud at worst. She stood up, flushed now but still posturing. You're seriously going to do this? To your own sister? You're going to humiliate me like this? No, I said. You did that yourself when you decided my work was easier to steal than to build on. Your own. I turned to the stunned group of would-be investors. This meeting is over. I suggest you verify every claim made before investing in anything that lacks legal clarity. If you'd like to see the permits or ownership papers for yourself, I'll provide them. No one spoke. One man stood awkwardly, then another. Within minutes, the room emptied. The sound of car doors slamming one by one echoed into the twilight. Chloe didn't leave. She stood there, arms folded, fury just beneath the surface. This isn't over. You're right, I said quietly. It's not. Because now, I'm not just reclaiming my home, I'm protecting everything I've built, from you. And this time, I wasn't backing down. The next 48 hours felt like walking through a storm no one else could see. I changed the locks that same night, installed remote access security updates through the smart system I'd designed, and activated biometric entry for myself only. Chloe didn't come back immediately, not physically, but her presence began seeping in through every digital crack. By morning, my phone had exploded with messages. Some were from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Others were from family, friends who'd known us since we were children. And nearly every one of them said the same thing, wrapped in different versions of guilt. Maya, it's just a house. Your sister is heartbroken. Was it worth the drama? Family should come before property. One text from my Aunt Lon hit harder than the rest. You always were the cold one. Just because you're smart doesn't mean you have to be cruel. Chloe's trying. She needs support, not punishment. I sat at the kitchen island, phone in hand, the morning sun glowing softly through the solar-filtered glass. It should have been a peaceful moment. But I felt the old pressure again, of being expected to yield, to explain myself for protecting what was mine, to perform emotional labor in the name of family unity. Not a single person asked what Chloe had done. Not one message acknowledged the violation, the deception, the manipulation of our parents to co-sign her delusion. And my parents? Silence. I reached out to them once, just a simple text. Do you understand what she's doing? No reply. Instead, I found a passive-aggressive post on my mother's Facebook feed the next day. A photo of Chloe as a child, captioned, "Some hearts break because they care too much. Some walls get built because others stop caring at all." It got over 100 likes and a string of comments about how strong Chloe must be and how ungrateful some people can be when they have it all. The villa, once my sanctuary, began to feel like a bunker. The lavender plants I'd chosen for the front yard, because their scent reminded me of calm days in my grandmother's garden, suddenly looked ornamental, out of place. Even the walls I'd designed to hold warmth felt like they were pressing in. The isolation didn't come from being alone. I had colleagues, loyal friends, even former professors who respected me deeply. But none of them shared my last name. None of them had memories of family dinners, or the old wooden swing in our childhood backyard, or the voice of my mother calling us in from the rain. I think that's what hurt most. It wasn't the loss of a relationship. It was the recognition that maybe it had never existed the way I thought it did. Still, I knew backing down would only feed the story Chloe was trying to tell. That I was rigid, cold, unloving. The career, woman who had no time for anyone. The bitter sister. But I also knew that silence had never protected me before. And this time, I wasn't going to let guilt dress itself up as love. So I took a deep breath, turned off my notifications, and opened a blank document on my laptop. At the top, I typed a title, Evidence File, Unauthorized Property Use and Trademark Misrepresentation. Because if they wanted to turn this into a war, I was finally ready to fight back on my terms, with facts, with law, and with the quiet resolve of someone who had spent a lifetime building what no one ever thought she could. 3 days after I began compiling the evidence, the doorbell rang just after noon. I glanced at the smart panel. Brandon Hayes, Chloe's fiancé. He'd always been somewhat in the background, the clean-cut, cautious type who smiled politely at family dinners and rarely said much. We'd only exchanged a handful of sentences. Before, usually awkward small talk about the weather or houseplants. So seeing him now, unannounced and visibly uneasy, was unexpected. I opened the door. He was holding a slim folder and had the look of someone who hadn't slept properly in days. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked. "It's about Chloe." I let him in and offered him tea, more out of habit than hospitality. He declined. We sat across from each other in the living room, my living room, and he didn't waste time. "She said the house was hers," he began. She told me your parents had gifted it to her as part of our engagement. Said it was under your name for legal reasons, tax benefits or something. I didn't question it at first. I mean, I didn't think she'd lie. He opened the folder, sliding several documents onto the coffee table. Bank statements, wire transfers, branding mock-ups, and then investment pitches. Chloe had created a full business model called Tran Green Horizons, with this house as the flagship. The problem? Every document referenced permits and architectural experience she didn't have, credentials that didn't belong to her. She used my name, I murmured, scanning the pages. And it was worse than I imagined. Chloe had copied my professional resume, copied phrasing from my firm's mission statement, even forged approval letters from industry partners I knew personally. Brandon looked ashamed. She told me you were fine with it, that you just didn't want to be the public face, so she was taking the lead. I only started to doubt her when I saw your name etched into the beam above the reading nook. That doesn't look like someone who's willing to stay in the background. She used our parents' names to apply for loans, he added quietly. Said they were co-founders. She's been withdrawing money from our shared account and transferring it to something called Tran Estates Holdings. That name made my stomach twist. I'd seen it before, on social media, tied to flashy posts showcasing Chloe's design philosophy. Photos of this villa's interiors captioned, "Curated for clarity, created for legacy." I stood, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out the external drive I had started saving security footage to. Come with me. We went into the office. I connected the drive to the main system and pulled up video footage from the smart cameras installed throughout the property. Unlike most homes, mine was equipped with behavioral analytics, part of a smart safety research grant I had consulted on. That meant the system didn't just record movement, it categorized interactions, voice, presence, object handling. Together, we watched as Chloe walked a group of sharply dressed investors through my home just 2 days before. She pointed to the energy wall and called it my patent-pending thermal wave design. She referenced my foundation's partnership with eco-housing alliances, partnerships that hadn't even gone public yet. Brandon stared, stunned. She told them she designed the HVAC system herself. She barely passed her first-year design elective, I said coldly. The next file showed Chloe handing out contracts that bore my digital signature, or a version of it. A crude forgery. She's not just lying, I said aloud. She's committing fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, real estate misrepresentation. Brandon nodded slowly. I didn't know how far it had gone, but I couldn't. Stay silent, not anymore. I sent the full drive to my lawyer, Janine, an expert in intellectual property and real estate law. Within the hour, she called back. Maya, this is more than a civil issue. She's committed multiple state and federal offenses, and if she's using fake permits to raise investor funds, the SEC could get involved. You need to file a formal complaint. Today, I exhaled, the air sharp in my lungs. Do we have enough? We have enough to stop her, but if you want to protect your name long-term, we'll need to go public, quietly but firmly. And we'll need every single record, emails, signatures, camera footage, marketing collateral, everything? I nodded, already moving. I'll get it. By that evening, I had compiled an evidence package totaling over 80 items, screen captures, voice transcripts, property scans, forged branding pitches, and a list of all social media posts referencing my home. Brandon wrote a full statement and agreed to testify if it came to court. I also discovered that Chloe had signed an investor letter of intent, claiming she had architectural certifications from Lumen Habitat Studio. My firm, me. That was the last straw. I filed the legal complaint that night, and then I posted a single message on my professional account. To those receiving solicitations from Tran Green Horizons or Tran Estates Holdings, be advised, that no such entity has legal rights to the Lumen Villa project. All architectural designs, permits, and ownership are the sole property of Maya Tran and Lumen Habitat Studio. Any use of my name or work without consent is being addressed through legal action. Verify before you invest. I logged off. It wasn't about online backlash anymore. This was about integrity, identity, and justice, and I was just getting started. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. Less than 48 hours after my post went live, the inbox at my firm was flooded with inquiries. Some were cautious potential investors asking for clarification. Others were blunt, angry messages from people who had already wired funds to Tran Green Horizons and now felt duped. One woman sent a scanned contract with Chloe's fake signature beside a counterfeit version of my own. It was surreal. Reading language pulled directly from my professional materials, now used like a mask for fraud. Janine filed cease and desist orders with alarming speed. By the end of the week, we had submitted not only the formal civil complaint, but a full criminal report with the Washington State Attorney General's office. The allegations: identity theft, wire fraud, false representation, and use of forged licensing credentials. Through Janine's industry network, we also sent the case to the city's Department of Real Estate Licensing and the National Architecture Registration Board. Every door Chloe had opened illegally was now slamming shut. But the moment that made it real came on a rainy Tuesday morning when two plainclothes officers knocked on my door. They asked for access to the smart security footage I'd logged. I handed them the drive, then watched silently as they walked down the slate pathway toward their cruiser. My sister's future suddenly nestled inside a chain of USB evidence and official reports. The arrest didn't happen at night or in some dramatic showdown. It was broad daylight, outside a cafe in Fremont, where Chloe was meeting what we later learned was another potential backer. She never saw it coming. One minute, she was flipping through her mood board on an iPad, sipping cold brew, probably spinning a story. The next, she was in handcuffs, a startled barista watching from behind a tray of almond croissants. News spread quickly. A local blog picked up the story, and then a larger outlet, connecting the arrest to a growing list of online investors who had been promised early access to an eco-villa network that never existed. The headlines weren't cruel, but they were sharp. Social media star turned real estate fraud suspect. Influencer faces charges for misusing architect sister's name. My parents called that night. I didn't answer. Instead, I drove to my office, sat in the glow of my desk lamp, and read the official police report out loud to myself. It felt necessary. Like a grounding ritual, a confirmation that I wasn't imagining the scale of it. The arraignment came swiftly. Chloe's bail was posted by a former brand partner, someone who, ironically, had once hired me to speak at a design expo, but the charges stuck. The court had everything: testimony, documents, even footage of her leading the investor tours inside my house, gesturing to walls and fixtures while claiming she'd designed them. And then came the most unexpected moment. Of all, my parents were subpoenaed. It turned out their signatures had appeared on 3 separate loan documents used to funnel investor money into Chloe's fake company account. Whether they knew what they were signing or had just trusted her, as they always had, didn't matter. The law viewed it as participation. They weren't charged criminally, but the civil penalties were steep. The courtroom was quiet the day of the preliminary hearing. Chloe sat with her lawyer at the front, dressed neatly but with a shaken composure. Gone was the curated confidence, the perfect lashes, the practiced smiles. Her eyes darted, her hands fidgeted. When her name was called and the charges read, aloud she didn't flinch. But she didn't argue either. I sat behind the prosecution table with Janine beside me, our folders thick with the case file. As the judge reviewed the evidence, he turned more than once to Chloe's legal team with visible irritation. "This isn't a simple sibling dispute," he said at one point. This is a calculated impersonation carried out for financial gain, using a family member's name, professional reputation, and legally protected property. When the judge finally ruled that the case would proceed to trial, I felt no vindictive joy, only breath. A breath I didn't realize I'd been holding since the first time Chloe had said, "Mom and Dad told you, right?" The trial date was set, and until then, Chloe was ordered not to contact me. A restraining order was issued covering the villa and all properties registered under my name. Brandon, now fully separated from her, submitted a full statement to the court and returned several stolen files he had discovered on her laptop. Back home, I activated the smart system's perimeter lock and walked room to room, taking in each detail with new eyes. The villa no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like it had weathered something with me. Justice wasn't swift, it wasn't clean, but it was coming, measured, methodical, inevitable. And this time, the truth didn't. Need to scream? It just needed to be heard. The villa was quiet again. Not the uneasy silence of tension, but the kind that feels earned, like the air finally settled after a long, bitter storm. A week had passed since the hearing, and while the legal process was far from over, the worst of the chaos had passed. Chloe was out on bail but silent. My parents had retreated from public view. No more cryptic Facebook posts, no phone calls. Just quiet. And yet, for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. I felt clear. The villa launch, which I had postponed indefinitely, was back on the calendar. But this time, it wasn't a grand PR event or a media showcase. It was smaller, warmer, deeply intentional. I invited the people who mattered, the engineers who helped me troubleshoot the geothermal system in its early stages, the design interns who spent late nights obsessing over trim colors and acoustic flow. My best friend Sam, who once brought MIFO during the winter I caught pneumonia installing the second-floor beams by hand. They all came. On the night of the gathering, soft amber lights lit the pathway from the floating steps to the open-concept kitchen. People moved through the space as if they were part of its original blueprint, touching the textured walls, asking about the air filtration sensors, marveling at the self-tinting glass. There were no speeches, just laughter, quiet awe, and a sense of community that I had always hoped the space would hold. Toward the end of the evening, I stood alone on the terrace overlooking the lake. The water reflected streaks of violet and indigo, the same palette I had designed the reading room around. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to feel pride, not just for what I'd protected, but for what I had created. This wasn't just a house. It was the result of decades of work, of late nights and early doubts, of navigating an industry that too often pretended women like me didn't belong. It was a physical manifesto of my values, resilience, purpose, and clarity. A few days later, I received an invitation to speak at a national conference on green architecture. The topic they suggested: Designing for Integrity, when your work is also your identity. I smiled at the title. It was perfect, and it felt like the start of something new. I accepted the offer, not because I wanted to tell a cautionary tale, but because I knew there were other women out there, other professionals, other creators, who'd been told to step aside for the sake of family harmony, who had been expected to give without acknowledgement, to compromise without complaint. My story wasn't unique, but that's exactly why it mattered. I decided to launch a mentorship program under my firm's name, Lumen Roots, designed for young women in architecture and sustainable design. It would offer workshops, portfolio support, and one-on-one coaching. The idea came to me while reviewing an old blueprint, my first house design ever, drawn with clumsy lines and impossible angles. I kept it framed in the studio as a reminder that growth is messy, but it always starts with claiming space. The villa now stood not only as a home, but as a symbol of what happens when boundaries are enforced, when integrity wins, when silence is replaced with truth, and when a woman finally decides that protecting her light is not cruelty, it's courage. In the end, this was never just about a house. It was about identity, boundaries, and the high emotional cost of being the one who says no when everyone expects silence. What Maya went through is more than just a dramatic family conflict. It's a mirror reflecting a truth many people are too afraid to say out loud. That loyalty does not mean surrender, and love does not require self-erasure. When family entitlement is disguised as tradition, when guilt is weaponized as love, standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Maya didn't just protect a property. She protected the years of work, the dream built on grit and sleepless nights, and the dignity that comes from not allowing yourself to be repackaged as someone else's shortcut to success. The lesson is simple but often hard to live by. Your boundaries are not a betrayal. They are the blueprint of your self-respect. What would you have done in Maya's place? Have you ever faced pressure to give up something important for the sake of family? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help someone else find clarity too. And if you found this story powerful, subscribe for more narratives that speak truth, justice, and real strength.